Hello, welcome to Business Spotlight. I am Mark Hunter, and today I am joined by Vince Spangenberg of Pebble Mountain Properties. Vince, thank you very much for coming along today. How you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks, Mark. Very good indeed. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this interview. So, so tell me, Vince, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, then, Pebble Mountain Properties.
Sure. We actually started from scratch about 7 years ago, just over 7 years ago. I had just moved to the Aberdeen area with my partner. We were renting a property just outside Aberdeen using one of the, shall we say, larger letting agents. I'm not going to mention any names, but one of the larger letting agents in town. And we noticed very, very quickly that there were quite a few issues. Um, Believe it or not, before I actually became a letting agent, I sold vending machines. And I sold vending machines all over the north of Scotland. And I did that for about 17 years, so quite a long time. And I don't want to big myself up too much, but I was actually quite good at it. But I wanted a bit more. I wanted to have my own business. And everything seemed to happen at the same sort of time. So, me thinking about potentially moving on, having issues with our letting agent, this big light bulb moment, I suddenly thought, why don't you become, with your experience in customer service, etc., a letting agent? So I looked into it and decided, yep, let's do this. So I handed in my notice, started the letting agency literally from nothing, from scratch. And here we are about 7 years later or so, and we're looking after about 160, 170 properties now in Aberdeen City, Aberdeen Shire. We go up as far north as Peterhead. We are taking on new properties on a fairly regular basis. Yeah, haven't really looked back. One of the things that happened by coincidence around about the same sort of time was that the legislation in Scotland changed quite dramatically with regards to letting agents. And that was actually good for us because for us it was all brand new, and so we were learning anyway. And the fact that the legislation was changing for everybody else, to us it was just a new thing we had to learn, So yeah, to indirectly actually helped us quite a lot, being totally honest with you.
Excellent, excellent. Could you tell us a little bit more about that learning? Because here at Action Coach, we're all about lifelong learning. Could you tell us a little bit more about that learning? And has that been your biggest learning since coming into this industry then?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that that is probably the case. However, like a lot of these jobs, it's very hands-on. So I tend to find that not everything goes perfectly from start to finish. There are on a I wouldn't say regular basis. I was going to say regular, but from time to time, there are issues that we have to work round. And the good thing is that it is a learning experience. So we've learned from our mistakes, and I think that anybody who's running a business needs to do that. But with regards to the official learning, all letting agents in Scotland now have to have their own registration number. Very, very straightforward. It's known as a LARN, LARN, and it stands for letting agent registration number. In the past, we had a landlord registration number similar to any other landlord who's renting out their property in Scotland. That changed in 2017, and we now have to be registered with the Scottish Government. But for us to be registered with the Scottish Government, we have to be suitably qualified. To be suitably qualified, we have to be suitably trained and pass examinations. So, it is quite a strict situation, I guess, for letting agents, and you have to have that LAN number, which were then provided on all forms of communication, on even on your business cards, emails, etc., etc. You've got to include this LAN number, and if you don't have a LAN number, you are not legally allowed to trade in Scotland as a letting agent.
Wow, wow, yeah, excellent. Some very sound advice for anyone out there. So yeah, good to know.
Yeah,
Good to
yeah.
know. Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's a big share there. Thank you very much, Vince. So, um, so in regards to you kind of going back to 7 years ago when you first started this business, then what was it that really sort of inspired you then? And could you then maybe tell us who inspires you today now?
Yeah, it's quite funny because I was saying earlier on, we were actually using another letting agent, and I remember we had a problem with one of the lights in the property we were living in kept flickering all the time, and we needed somebody to come and have a look at it because we tried changing the bulb or whatever. We realized there's obviously a connection, a loose connection somewhere. So we reported it to the letting agent, and they sent out a plumber. So the plumber fairly obviously had no idea about electrics, etc. And we had ongoing issues like this where the wrong person was being sent out. And we thought at the end of the day we need to be able to give them, a better customer service to people. Listen to what people are actually saying. One of the things that we like to say, our tagline is communication is key. We're not going to say we get it right every time, but we get it right a lot of the time. And the point is, you have one of these, two of these, use them in proportion. So listen to what people are trying to say to you. And only respond when you actually have the correct answer. As I said before, people generally like to know what's going on. And even if you don't have any good news for them, they would rather hear bad news than no news. And you just keep them in the dark all the time. But with regards to inspiration, I'll be totally honest with you. Yeah, I would say my partner, Anna, has been one of the biggest inspirations. She has done a heck of a lot of work with commercial property. And she just doesn't put her feet up. She's just working all the time. She is well known. She's well loved around the area, and she is a very, very switched on cookie, to be honest with you. The other person as well, and I appreciate that this is very cheesy. The other person is my mother, believe it or not. My mother is almost 83 years old. She lives down in Dorset. She was a nurse for many years. She ran a care home down there as well. And believe it or not, to this day, even though she's nearly 83 years old, she still teaches aquarobics twice a week in the local pool. So no, she's an amazing inspiration because she told me a long time ago, you're only as young as you feel. And yeah, that keeps me going a huge amount too, if I'm being totally honest with you. She's always on the go.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. Two amazing, inspirational people and females as well. So
Females too.
fantastic. Excellent. Excellent. Um, is there, so that's inspiration then. Is there anyone that comes to mind when you first think of success? Is there anyone who's sort of, that comes to mind when you think of success then?
Yeah, I guess there is. I mean, being totally honest with you, when I work for the vending company, I don't mind mentioning them because they're still one of the largest companies based in the north of Scotland. And being the north of Scotland, it's an abbreviation of that, North Scot Vending. Their head office is up in Inverness, which is where I was based before I started this company. They have a branch down here in Aberdeen too. But the guy who runs it is a guy called Dave Newsham. And even though I left to start the letting agency, he is still one of my best pals. And he is also an inspiration, I guess, because as far as success is concerned, you know, I think that COVID was particularly difficult for a lot of industries. His particularly because he was selling vending machines, and to sell vending machines and for vending machine industry to be successful, you need people in the offices to be using them. And obviously, everybody's working from home. However, he's managed to continue growing as far as the business is concerned, and he's done incredibly well. Coincidentally, his brother, Steve, is actually based down in Norfolk, and he has an estate agency down there called One Estates. And I've seen how he's actually grown his business, similar to myself, from nothing. He's been going a bit longer than myself. He does sales as well, which I don't do, but he's done incredibly well too. So both those brothers, Dave and Steve Newsham, I know them both very, very well. They're both dear friends of mine, and both of them have grown their businesses unimaginably. They've done so well, the two of them. And fortunately, I'm in touch with the two of them on a regular basis via social media, on the phone. I go and stay with them. We do meet up on a fairly regular basis.
That's great to hear. Great to hear success stories there as well. And do you often hit off each other in regards to getting ideas, even like networking? Is it is it a good form of networking, as well, keeping in
Yeah.
with
No,
your
yeah,
friends?
no, we do, to be honest, Mark, because we're all pretty proactive. And the funny thing is, particularly Steve, down in Norfolk, um, a lot of it is unofficial networking, in so much that, okay, you have your BNI and all these other networking groups, etc., which are all great, but unofficial networking. And I love this because you meet somebody for the first time, and it could be in a bar, it could be a friend of a friend, it could literally be somebody in a queue at the bank, or whatever, and you just start chatting. And you find out sooner or later, you get first impression, do I like this person, do I not like this person, and you have a bit of a chat. I was actually in the queue on Friday night, believe it or not, for my regular fish supper, as we call it up here. And I was chatting to the guy in front of me, and he was a much older guy, a retired bloke. And we were talking, just passing the time of day, etc. And it just happened to ask, what it was he used to do. And ironically, he used to be a banker, believe it or not, now retired. And then he asked what I did, and I told him that I'm a letting agent. And he says, "Oh, which areas do you cover?" And we started chatting about this, and then I found out he's potentially got a property that he's fed up with managing. He's looking for a letting agent, but that's pure coincidence, And this is what I call unofficial networking. You just chat to people, People buy from people they like, and if you are approachable and you have a bit of a laugh and a joke, and you can laugh at yourself as well, I hasten to add, then it all works, And so I know that both Dave and Steve do this too. And the funny thing is, we actually look out for each other. So I find, I speak to people and I find out that they're actually looking for a water cooler, or a vending machine, or whatever. And the old Vince kicks in and says, "Oh, I might be able to help you with that." My daughter lives down in Norwich, which is down in Norfolk. So I do visit down there on a fairly regular basis. And the same thing applies, she was actually looking for a property fairly recently. So I put her in touch with Steve, so it's like that, I think, and when you have this contact with different people, no matter what the industry is, you do tend to look out for them, I think. And you hear something, and in the back of your mind, you think, "Oh, I might be able to help you with that," indirectly. You don't look for any reward. The reward is that you're actually helping somebody else out. And you know that what goes around comes around, and then sooner or later, they'll be back in touch and be able to help you out, So, no, it works well.
Excellent, excellent. And I love that you said about just you can meet anyone anywhere, and it will help yourself, it will help them, and what goes around comes around. So again, and as in Jeffrey Gittimer's book, it's always have your antennas on, because again, you just never know when you're going to meet someone who can help you and that you can help as well. So I absolutely
Yeah,
love that, Vince. Absolutely love that.
yeah. Funny enough, just on that, believe it or not, when we were doing our LAN training, which I was telling you about earlier on, this is just before COVID, etc. So it was classroom training, and I remember, well, actually, again, just before COVID, we got approached by, shall we say, a rather mature lady who contacted us, and she said, "Can I speak to Vince?" She started chatting to me, and she says, "You won't remember me. My name's Sheila. You actually sat at my table when we were doing the LAN training in Aberdeen." I said, "Right." She says, "Well, you were kind enough to make me a cup of tea because I had a sore leg that day. You got made me a cup of tea." She says, "I've decided I've had enough of this letting agency industry. I've got 11 properties here. Would you like them?" And she actually gave us 11 properties free of charge. There's no charge involved or anything like that at all. She says, "I know that you're going to look after them because you looked after me that day." And we'd actually got 11 properties gratis, free of charge from her. And that's all because I made her a cup of tea and had a bit of a chat.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And again, just always be kind. Be kind to people, and what you put out in this universe, you get back. That's something I
Sure.
believe in. Yeah, and I definitely, that's happened. You've gave us two brilliant examples of that happening for you. So that's fantastic, Vince. That is fantastic. Um, can can I just ask you, in regards to business, then, as a business owner, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced running a business then?
I think that the biggest challenge, if I'm being totally honest with you, is a lot of people don't realize how much work goes on in the background. particularly in this industry. You know, people see the letting agents collecting the rent, and then basically paying out, taking a commission from the rent and paying the rent out to the landlord, and that's what they see with regards to the majority of with letting agents. There is a heck of a lot of work that goes on in the background. You know, we have phone calls and emails on a daily basis from tenants who have got an issue. Perhaps the washing machine stopped working, the boiler's not working. Could be an issue perhaps with, I don't know, it could be that they can't pay the rent that month, you know, and what do you do? So there are ways that you have to deal with all of these issues. We had one particular problem in the past with a property that we inherited, where the tenant then decided to leave and left the property in an awful, awful situation. And it's not just a case of putting everything right as much as you possibly can, which can amount, well, in that particular case, it amounted to about £3,500, you know, and the landlord's not best pleased when that sort of thing happens, fairly obviously. But you've then got to go down the legal route, and you've got to know how to actually try and get that money back from, you know, the tenant who's now vamoosed, you know, it's disappeared. So I think that that's probably the biggest challenge, is trying to make people understand why there are sometimes extra charges. This is, you know, there are long hours, potentially long hours in this business. You know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. We regularly get phone calls out of hours from people who have come home, particularly on a Friday night, and the boiler's not working. I've got no heating for the weekend, and we've got to deal with it. So we're lucky we have some amazing contractors that work with us. That helps a huge amount. We have one particular property here, which is known as an HMO, House of Multiple Occupation, and it has students in there. Now, a lot of the students, for quite a few of them, it's their first time away from home, and you're almost like a father figure for them, and they come to you with advice, you know, and look for advice and whatever. But I do remember one young guy actually had arrived first time away from home, and I was trying to make him feel welcome. I met him at the property, showed him where his room was, showed him where everything was, the bathrooms, etc. And I said, look, and my card is on the wall here, so if you have any issues, any major problems or anything like that at all, give me a call. It's not a problem at all. I'll be happy to speak to you. It was about 2:30 in the morning on a Sunday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning. And I got a phone call, my mobile rang, and lo and behold, it was this guy, and yes, this is me. What's the matter? It's Steve here. I've just moved into the HMO. You helped me move in earlier on yesterday. Yes. It's Alan. Can you tell him to give me my toothbrush back? That was it, you know. So father figure, well, yeah, fathers do tell off sometimes, as well as I recall. So yeah, we had a few words, as you can imagine. So yeah, these things do happen, obviously, but yeah, generally speaking, we're very, very lucky. We do tend to find that you know, making sure you've got the right tenant from day one, you know, is paramount, and getting good tenants, good landlords, letting tenants know where the line is and make sure they don't cross the line. You know, yeah, generally speaking, we're very, very lucky. We've got a good bunch of tenants, good bunch of landlords, and that really, really makes the job a lot easier, to be honest.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, it really does. It really does. You know, I've really enjoyed this interview with you, Vince, and you know, you've had some brilliant stories and some great learnings to tell us today. You know, I think our audience are going to take something from this without a doubt. I've got one last question though, and I normally like to ask this. Then, you know, is there anything that you would maybe change or do differently? And you know, and that's kind of two questions then. And is there maybe any advice that you would give to a business owner, or maybe someone who's starting out in a business then?
Yeah, definitely. Speak to as many people as you can. If you're going to do something that's different, and something you've never done before, I have no regrets doing what I'm doing just now, I hasten to add. But most of the learning that I've done has been on the way, you know, and I'm still learning. Every day's a school day, as they say. And what I would say is every day, try to learn something more about the industry you're looking to join. Get as much experience as you possibly can from people who are already in the industry. You know, believe it or not, some of the people that I like to call friends of mine here in Aberdeen are also letting agents. And okay, yes, we are competitors. However, that can actually be a good thing too, being competitors, because um, we've tended to find that we actually help each other out a little bit now. So I told you the example earlier on of the person who left the property in a really bad condition. We don't mention names. We don't try to drop people in it too much, but we try to give hints to people and say, look, watch out. We know of people who are looking for a property at the moment. Just be very, very careful. So, you know, we do try to help each other out. So I would say that stay close to people who are in the industry and doing a similar job to yourself. Be friends with them, you know, because I've actually had other letting agents contact me and saying, look, we're really, really busy at the moment. We can't take on this property. Would you be able to have capacity to take this property on? And we've actually got business from other letting agents, you know, so that does actually help. I gave them, you know, the example earlier on of Sheila, the lady who gave us 11 properties. Yeah, you really need to research the industry as much as you possibly can. And one final thing on that as well is I would say, not only research the industry, but research where it's failing in some cases or where there's a problem, because I found that there were problems in the industry, which I think is a lot better now, I hasten to add, where customer service wasn't what it should be. And because I come from a customer service background, put yourself in the customer's shoes, you know, both from a landlord and a tenant's point of view. What would you like to hear from the letting agent if you were speaking to them? You know, so I found that really helps a huge amount. And one little phrase that I like quite a lot as well, I must admit, is winners make it happen, losers let it happen. And I find that's you know, you have to be proactive in this industry.
I love that. I love that. Winners make it happen. I absolutely love that. And I think that's a really good way to end this interview. You know, Vince, it's been an absolute pleasure. Again, there's been a lot of learnings from this. I've taken a lot from it, and I'm sure people watching this will too. So thank you so much, Vince. Thank you so much.
Mark, you're more than welcome. And cheers. And cheers to everybody else who's watching this.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Okay, see you next time. Thank you.